The stars shimmered beyond the massive viewing windows of the Galactic Coalition station. Hanari stood quietly in the corner of the Grand Hall, watching as delegates from across the galaxy filed in for the summit. Her simple gray diplomatic uniform made her blend into the background, exactly as she preferred. The formal clothing hid everything that mattered about who she really was. She watched the Kresh warriors enter first. They were massive reptilian creatures, their scales gleaming under the station lights. Each one stood at least 8 feet tall with powerful arms and tails that could crush bones. Their leader, Velmoth, walked with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. His yellow eyes scanned the room, dismissing most of what he saw. Behind Nari, Ambassador Park Daehyun adjusted his formal robes. He was her mentor and the only person on this station who knew her complete history. They had worked together for 3 years now, ever since she left her old life behind. He gave her a slight nod. She returned it with the smallest smile. Kim Ji-won rushed over to them, her young face bright with excitement. She was fresh from the Diplomatic Academy, assigned to Nari as an attaché just 2 months ago. "Commander Han, have you seen how many species came? This is the biggest peace summit in 50 years. Nari did not correct Ji-won about the title. She had not been called commander in a long time. It is important. The mining colonies in the Outer Rim have caused too much conflict. Everyone wants those resources. The Skyborn delegates arrived next, their feathered bodies moving with grace. Ambassador Quellen led them, his silver plumage marking him as ancient and wise. He was supposed to be the neutral mediator for these talks. Everyone trusted the Skyborn to be fair. Then came the hive mind representative, a creature called Threx. Its insectoid body moved on 6 legs and its compound eyes seemed to look at everything at once. The hive mind was a collective consciousness spread across millions of individuals. When Threx spoke, it spoke for all of them. Velmoth's voice boomed across the hall. "So these are the mighty humans we have heard so much about." He laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "They send us bureaucrats and paper pushers. Where are your warriors?" Several other Kresh warriors joined in the laughter. One of them pointed directly at Nari. "That one looks like she would break in a strong wind." Ji-won's face turned red with anger, but Nari put a gentle hand on her arm. "Let them talk," she said softly. Daehyun stepped forward to begin the introductions. "The human delegation welcomes all of you. We come in hopes of finding peace." "Peace." Velmoth spat the word like it tasted bad. "Humans are always talking about peace. But what do you know of real conflict? Your species joined the coalition only 60 years ago. You are children compared to the rest of us." Ambassador Quellen raised a wing. "Please, honored delegates. We are here to talk, not to argue about who has seen more war." But Velmoth was not finished. He walked closer to the human delegation, his massive form towering over them, his eyes fixed on Nari. "You, female, what is your role here?" "I am Lieutenant Commander Han Nari. I assist Ambassador Park with negotiations." "Lieutenant Commander." Velmoth seemed amused. "A military title. Tell me, little human, have you ever fought in a real battle? Have you ever held a weapon? Have you ever watched an enemy die?" Nari met his eyes without fear. Her voice stayed calm and professional. "I am here to prevent battles, not discuss old ones." The Kresh warlord laughed again. "She speaks in riddles. Just like all humans, they hide behind words because they have no strength." He looked at his warriors. "She has never fought. I can see it in her eyes, too soft, too weak." Around the room, other delegates whispered to each other. Some seemed to agree with Velmoth. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy as diplomats and scientists, not warriors. They built things and talked about problems. Fighting was for the stronger species. Threx's voice clicked and buzzed. "Appearances can deceive. The hive mind has learned this across millennia." "The bugs can believe what they want," Velmoth said. "I know a fighter when I see one. And she is not one." The opening ceremony began. Each delegation presented their claims to the disputed mining colonies. The Kresh wanted the resources for building weapons and ships. The Skyborn wanted them for trade. The hive mind wanted them for expansion. Smaller species argued they should share everything equally. Nari listened carefully to every word. She took notes on a small data pad, her fingers moving quickly. She noticed how Velmoth's warriors positioned themselves around the room. She saw which delegates seemed nervous and which seemed confident. She watched Quellen carefully as he mediated discussions. During a break, Ji-won pulled Nari aside. "How can you stand it? The way they talk to us, to you? Words are just words, Nari said. What matters is finding a solution that works. But they are so disrespectful. Velmoth acts like we are nothing. Nari looked at the young woman. He acts from his experience. In Kresh culture, strength is everything. They respect warriors and conquerors. To them, diplomats are weak because we choose words over weapons. Are we weak? Jiwan asked. For just a moment, something changed in Nari's eyes. Something hard and cold that made Jiwan take a step back. Then it was gone, replaced by the gentle diplomat again. No, we are not weak. We just fight different battles. The first day of negotiations ended with little progress. Each side held firm to their positions. Velmoth continued to mock the human delegation at every opportunity. Other species began to follow his lead, making subtle jabs about human softness. That evening, Nari stood in her quarters, looking at herself in the mirror. She wore a simple sleep shirt with long sleeves. Slowly, she rolled up one sleeve, then the other. Her arms were covered in scars, burn marks from plasma weapons, long thin lines from blade cuts, chemical burns that had healed badly. Each scar had a story. Each one represented a battle she had survived. She traced one particular scar on her left forearm, the Battle of Europa Station. She had been 24 years old then, leading a strike team against raiders who had taken civilian hostages. The reactor had been failing, leaking radiation. She had stayed behind to evacuate everyone else, her suit damaged and her arm exposed to the deadly energy. Another scar across her right shoulder. The Kepler massacre. She had fought for 18 hours straight, defending a colony of scientists from an invasion force. She had taken a vibroblade to the shoulder but kept fighting because there was no one else. There were 17 scars in total. 17 times she had come close to death. 17 times she had survived when others had not. She pulled her sleeves back down, hiding them again. That life was supposed to be over. She had chosen diplomacy because she was tired of fighting. She had seen enough death. She wanted to save lives by preventing wars, not by winning them. A soft chime alerted her to a message from Daehyun. Are you all right? I know today was difficult. She typed back quickly. I am fine. Tomorrow will be better. But she was wrong. Tomorrow would not be better. At exactly Euro 300 station time, an explosion rocked the diplomatic quarter. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Red emergency lights flooded the hallways. Nari was on her feet instantly, her training taking over before she was fully awake. Her communicator crackled. It was Daehyun. Nari, the station is under attack. Multiple hostiles have breached the diplomatic sector. Security protocols are engaging. We are locked down. She pulled on her uniform quickly. How long until coalition forces arrive? 72 hours at minimum. We are on our own until then. Nari grabbed her data pad and headed for the door. As she ran through the corridors toward the assembly point, she could hear weapons fire in the distance. Screams echoed through the ventilation system. Smoke filled some of the hallways. When she reached the main conference hall, she found chaos. Delegates huddled together in fear. Velmoth's warriors formed a defensive line at the entrance. Ambassador Quellen tried to organize an evacuation plan. Threx's insectoid form stood perfectly still, processing information. Jiwan ran to Nari, tears streaming down her face. They killed Ambassador Quellen's assistants. They are hunting us. Nari put her hands on the young woman's shoulders. Breathe. I need you to breathe and stay calm. Velmoth roared commands at his warriors. Form a perimeter. Kill anything that comes through those doors. Daehyun found Nari in the crowd. His face was grave. This is not a random attack. It is too well coordinated. Nari nodded slowly. She had already come to the same conclusion. Someone had planned this. Someone wanted this summit to fail, and now they were all trapped on a locked-down station with killers in the corridors and no help coming for 3 days. She looked around at the gathered delegates. At Velmoth with his warriors. At Quellen trying to maintain calm. At Threx calculating probabilities. At Jiwan shaking with fear. They thought she had never fought. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The emergency lights cast everything in shades of red. Nari moved through the panicked crowd of delegates, her eyes scanning every face and every shadow. Her training had kicked in automatically, like putting on an old familiar coat. She cataloged exits, weapons, defensive positions, and weak points without consciously thinking about it. Velmoth stood at the front of the hall, barking orders at his warriors. Secure all entrances. Anyone comes through, you kill him. The Kresh warriors obeyed instantly, taking positions with their plasma rifles. They were disciplined soldiers, Nari noticed. Well-trained. But their formation had obvious problems. They focused too much on the main entrance and ignored the ventilation shafts. They stood too close together, making them vulnerable to explosives. She said nothing. They would not listen to her anyway. Ambassador Quellen's voice rang out, trying to bring order. Please, everyone remain calm. The station's security systems will protect us until help arrives. Security systems are offline. Threx buzzed. The attackers disabled them during their initial breach. We are vulnerable. A younger Skyborn delegate stumbled forward, his feathers ruffled in fear. How many attackers are there? What do they want? Does it matter? Velmoth growled. They will die when they come for us. My warriors are the finest in the Kresh Empire. Nari moved closer to Daehyun and spoke quietly. The ventilation shafts. They are large enough for infiltration. We need to seal them. Daehyun looked at her with understanding in his eyes. He had served with her years ago before either of them became diplomats. He knew exactly what she was seeing. Can you do it without drawing attention? I will try. She moved along the edge of the hall, staying in the shadows. Jiwon followed her like a lost puppy. Commander, what are you doing? Checking for weak points in our defense. Should we tell Velmoth? Nari glanced at the Kresh warlord. He would not listen. He thinks he knows everything about combat. She found the first ventilation shaft near the back of the hall. It was covered by a grate, but the grate was designed to be removed for maintenance. Anyone with basic tools could take it off. She looked around and found a piece of broken furniture from the explosion. She wedged it against the grate, making it harder to open from the inside. That won't hold for long, Jiwon said. It does not need to hold long. It just needs to slow them down and make noise when they try. They moved to the next shaft. As Nari worked, Jiwon asked, How do you know about all this? Ventilation infiltration and defensive positions? I read a lot of security manuals. It was not exactly a lie. She had read many security manuals. She had also written several of them during her years in special operations. An explosion rocked the corridor outside the hall. Everyone jumped. Velmoth's warriors raised their weapons, ready to fire, but no one came through the doors. Threx's compound eyes whirred as they focused on different parts of the room. That was a distraction. The hive mind calculates a 67% probability that the real attack will come from a different direction. Before anyone could respond, plasma fire erupted from one of the side corridors. The Skyborn delegation had positioned themselves there during the initial panic. Now they were under direct attack. Screams filled the air. The Skyborn scattered as armed figures in black combat suits stormed their position. 3 of Quellen's delegates fell in the first seconds, their bodies smoking from plasma burns. Velmoth roared and charged toward the attack with half his warriors. They crashed into the enemy like a living avalanche. The Kresh were powerful in close combat, their massive strength and armored scales making them formidable. But the attackers were prepared. They used hit-and-run tactics, firing from cover and retreating before the Kresh could close distance. Nari's hand moved automatically toward her hip, reaching for a weapon that was not there. She had not carried a firearm in 3 years. Diplomats were not allowed weapons at coalition summits. She clenched her fist in frustration. Jiwon grabbed her arm.
We have to hide!
But Nari was not looking for a place to hide. She was analyzing the attackers' tactics. They moved in 4-person teams. They used suppressing fire to control movement. They targeted the weakest delegates first, trying to create maximum panic. These were professionals, not random terrorists. One team of attackers broke through the Kresh line and entered the main hall. Delegates screamed and ran in all directions. The attackers moved with deadly purpose toward the hive mind representative. Nari moved without thinking. She grabbed Jiwon and pulled her behind a support pillar just as plasma fire traced across where they had been standing. The young woman was frozen in terror, unable to move or speak. Stay here, Nari said. Her voice had changed. It was harder now, carrying the weight of command. Do not move unless I tell you to. She stepped out from cover and moved toward the nearest attacker. He was focused on targeting Threx and did not see her coming. Nari had no weapons, but she had been trained to fight without them. She came up behind him and struck him precisely in the nerve cluster at the base of his neck. He dropped instantly. She caught his plasma rifle before it hit the ground. The weapon felt familiar in her hands, like greeting an old friend. She checked the charge automatically. 70%, enough. The second attacker noticed his partner fall and turned toward Nari. He raised his weapon. She was faster. One shot to his center mass dropped him. Her movements were smooth and practiced, showing years of training. The third attacker fired at her. She was already moving, rolling behind cover. Return fire chewed up the floor where she had been. She came up in a different position and put 2 shots into the attacker's shoulder, disabling him without killing him. The fourth attacker tried to retreat. Velmoth caught him from behind and simply snapped his neck with one massive hand. The Kresh warlord turned to Nari, his yellow eyes wide with surprise. She stood there holding the plasma rifle with perfect combat posture. Her diplomatic calm had been replaced by something cold and focused. "You said you were not a warrior," Velmoth said slowly. "I said I was here to prevent battles. That is not the same thing." She lowered the rifle. "Your defensive formation has 3 major weaknesses. Your warriors are too clustered. You are not watching the ventilation shafts, and you are reacting instead of anticipating." Velmoth's jaw muscles worked as he ground his teeth. "You dare to question my tactics?" "I dare to keep us alive." Nari turned to Daehyun. "We need to move to a more defensible position. This hall is too large with too many access points." Daehyun nodded immediately. "Agreed. Where do you suggest?" "The station command center. It has reinforced walls, limited entrances, and access to security systems. Even if the main systems are down, there might be backup terminals we can use." Quellen stepped forward. "The command center is 3 levels up through corridors that may be filled with hostiles. Then we fight our way through." Nari looked at the gathered delegates. "Everyone who cannot fight stays in the center of the group. Warriors on the outside. We move fast and we move together." Velmoth stared at her for a long moment. She met his gaze without flinching. Finally, he laughed. It was not a mocking laugh this time. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as I thought. Very well, little diplomat. We do this your way. But if your plan fails, I will leave you behind. If my plan fails, we will all be dead. Your threats will not matter." They organized quickly. Nari positioned the Kresh warriors at the front and rear of the group, using their strength and firepower for heavy combat. The Skyborn took the flanks, their lighter builds better suited for quick movements. Threx moved in the center, protected by the others. The hive mind's collective intelligence was too valuable to risk. G1 stayed close to Nari, still shaking but trying to be brave. "I am sorry I froze," she whispered. "Fear is natural. Acting despite fear is courage. You will learn." They moved out into the corridor. Bodies lay scattered from the earlier fighting. The station's life support was damaged in sections, making the air thin and difficult to breathe. Emergency lights flickered, creating pools of darkness. Nari led them through the safest route she could plot. She used hand signals to direct the group, falling into old patterns of tactical command. Daehyun followed her lead without question. The others gradually fell into line as well. They encountered 2 more groups of attackers on the way to the command center. Both times, Nari's tactical positioning and quick thinking allowed them to prevail with minimal casualties. She called out targets, coordinated fire patterns, and predicted enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. By the time they reached the command center, even the Kresh warriors were following her orders without hesitation. Velmoth said nothing, but his expression had changed from mockery to grudging respect. The command center doors were sealed. Nari examined the locking mechanism. "Can Threx interface with the door controls?" The insectoid approached and extended several thin appendages into the control panel. After a moment, the doors hissed open. Inside, the command center was dark. "Emergency power only." But it was defensible. They secured the area and set up defensive positions. Nari found a working terminal and began accessing what remained of the station's systems. Most were offline, but she managed to pull up sensor logs from before the attack. What she found made her blood run cold. "Daehyun, look at this." He came over and studied the screen. His face went pale. "That is not possible." "What is it?" Velmoth demanded. Nari turned to face them all. The attackers did not breach from outside the station. They were already here, and according to these logs, their transport ship is registered to the Kresh Empire. Every Kresh warrior in the room raised their weapons, pointing them at Velmoth. The warlord roared in fury. "I would never authorize such a thing. This is a lie." "The sensors do not lie," Threx buzzed. "But the warlord's rage appears genuine. The hive mind suggests an alternative explanation. A faction within the Kresh Empire may be acting independently." Nari nodded slowly. "Extremists. Someone who does not want peace. Someone who benefits from continued conflict." Velmoth's rage transformed into something colder. If that is true, then someone in my empire has betrayed me. Betrayed all of us. Not just your empire, Nari said quietly. She pulled up more data. The attack is too coordinated. Multiple species working together. Kresh extremists, yes, but also others. She looked around the room at all the delegates. The traitor is not just out there hunting us. The traitor is in here with us. The room fell silent. Everyone looked at everyone else with sudden suspicion. Someone among the delegates had planned this attack. Someone wanted them all dead, and they had 70 hours until help arrived. The command center felt smaller with everyone inside. Delegates who had been arguing about mining rights just hours ago now huddled together in fear. Warriors from different species watched each other with suspicion. Trust had died with the first explosion. Nari stood at the central terminal studying data streams. Her mind worked through possibilities like a soldier planning a battlefield strategy. Someone here had betrayed them all. Someone had arranged for extremists to infiltrate the summit and kill everyone except themselves. The question was who? Velmoth paced like a caged predator. We should interrogate everyone. Force them to confess. Torture proves nothing, Nari said without looking up from her screen. A traitor prepared enough to plan this would be prepared to resist interrogation. We need evidence, not forced confessions. Then what do you suggest, human? Nari finally turned to face them all. We defend this position and we investigate. The traitor will make mistakes. They always do. How can you be so certain? Quellen asked. The old Skyborn ambassador looked tired. He had lost 3 of his delegates already. Because I have hunted traitors before. The words hung in the air. Jiwon stared at Nari with wide eyes. You have? When? Nari did not answer. Instead, she pulled up a tactical map of the station. The attackers will regroup and come for us here. This position is strong, but not perfect. We need to fortify these entry points and set up early warning systems. She began assigning tasks. The Kresh warriors would handle heavy barriers. The Skyborn would set up sensors using parts from the command center equipment. Threx would monitor all communications for signs of enemy coordination. Velmoth watched her take command of his warriors without protest. Something had shifted in the way he looked at her. You move like a soldier, he said. You speak like a commander, yet you wear a diplomat's uniform. People can be more than one thing. Nari checked the plasma rifle she had taken earlier. Its charge was down to 40%. Not enough for a sustained fight. Do your warriors have spare power cells? One of the Kresh soldiers tossed her 3 cells. She caught them smoothly and reloaded her weapon. The movements were automatic, muscle memory from thousands of hours of training. Daehyun approached her quietly. Are you sure you want to do this? Once they know who you really are, you cannot go back to just being a diplomat. Diplomacy died when the first bomb went off. She looked at him with hard eyes. Now we survive. Then we find who did this. Hours passed as they worked. Nari moved through the command center, checking every defensive position and making adjustments. She taught Jiwon how to use a plasma pistol, showing her proper stance and trigger discipline. The young woman was terrified but determined to learn. I always thought diplomats were supposed to be above violence, Jiwon said as she practiced her aim. Diplomats prevent violence when possible, but we exist in a violent universe. Refusing to acknowledge that does not make us noble. It makes us unprepared. They heard the attackers coming before they saw them. The motion sensors Nari had ordered placed gave them 5 minutes of warning. Everyone took their positions. Warriors at the barriers. Non-combatants in the protected center of the room. The first assault came hard and fast. Plasma fire lit up the corridors outside the command center. Explosions rocked the walls. The Kresh warriors returned fire with devastating effect, their powerful rifles tearing through the attackers' cover. Nari did not stay behind the barriers with the others. She moved along the defensive line, calling out targets and coordinating fire. When she saw an attacker trying to flank their position through a damaged wall section, she went after him herself. She moved through the smoke and chaos with practiced efficiency. The attacker turned toward her, raising his weapon. She was faster. 3 shots, center mass. He dropped. She took his ammunition and moved back to the defensive line. Velmoth saw her emerge from the smoke. You should not risk yourself like that. You are in command. A commander who will not fight beside her people is not worth following. The attack broke against their defenses. Bodies of extremists littered the corridor. But Nari knew they would come again. They had numbers and time on their side. During the lull, Velmoth approached her directly. "I owe you an apology, hun Nari. I called you weak. I said you had never fought. I was wrong. Yes, you were." He laughed, surprised by her bluntness. "You do not forgive easily. You did not ask for forgiveness. You stated a fact." She looked at the Kresh warlord. "Your warriors are brave and strong. But bravery without strategy just gets people killed faster. Strength without intelligence is wasted. You speak like you have commanded soldiers before." Nari said nothing. She rolled up one sleeve of her uniform, then the other. The scars on her arms were revealed under the emergency lighting. Burn marks, blade cuts, chemical damage. Each scar told a story of violence survived. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at her arms. Velmoth's voice was quiet. "Battle scars, real ones, not training accidents. I have fought," Nari said simply. "I have fought things that would give you nightmares, Velmoth. I fought when I was younger and believed that strength solved everything. I fought in battles where everyone died except me. I fought until I could not stand to fight anymore." She looked around at all of them. "I became a diplomat because I was tired of war. Because I wanted to save lives by preventing battles instead of winning them. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, I could make the galaxy a little less violent." Jiwon's voice was barely a whisper. "What battles? Where?" "Europa Station. The Kepler Massacre. The Phantom War." Each name fell like a stone. Those were famous battles, legendary in military history. I was part of Project Phantom. Human Special Operations. We handled situations too dangerous or too sensitive for regular military. Daehyun spoke up. Han Nari was one of the youngest operators ever recruited. She completed 47 missions in 8 years. 17 of those missions she was the only survivor. Threx's compound eyes focused entirely on Nari. "The hive mind remembers the phantom operatives. You were myths. Stories told to frighten enemy soldiers. We did not believe humans had such warriors. We did. We do." Nari pulled her sleeves back down. "But being a warrior is not the same as being strong. Real strength is choosing when to fight and when to find another way." She pointed to one scar on her left forearm. "This one is from Europa Station. Reactor breach. I stayed behind to evacuate civilians. Took 3 months to heal. I saved 247 lives that day." Then she touched a long scar across her right shoulder. "This is from Kepler. 18 hours of continuous combat defending scientists from raiders. I took a blade here but kept fighting. 32 people survived because I did not quit." Each scar had a story. Each story was about sacrifice, about choosing to protect others no matter the cost. The scars were not just marks of violence. They were marks of survival and duty. Velmoth reached out slowly and traced one of the scars with a massive claw, surprisingly gentle. "In Kresh culture, we honor our scars. They prove we have faced death and won. I have many scars, but none are as meaningful as those earned protecting the weak." He stepped back and placed his fist over his heart in a Kresh salute. "I name you Battle Sister Han Nari. You have earned the respect of the Kresh Empire." The other Kresh warriors repeated the salute. It was the highest honor they could give to a non-Kresh warrior. Quellan spoke up. "I too must apologize. The Skyborn thought humans were simply builders and talkers. We did not know you had warriors of such caliber." "Most humans are builders and talkers," Nari said. "We prefer it that way. But when necessary, we remember how to fight. We just choose not to unless we must." A new alert sounded. Threx's sensors had picked up something. The insectoid worked at a terminal, processing data. "Interesting. The hive mind has detected a pattern in the attacks. They are coordinated by someone with access to Coalition tactical frequencies." Nari moved to the terminal. "Show me." Threx brought up communication logs. Someone had been sending encrypted signals to the attackers, directing their movements and timing their assaults. The encryption was sophisticated but not perfect. Pieces of the messages were breaking through. "Can you trace the source?" Nari asked. "The hive mind is working on it. But the traitor is clever. They are bouncing the signal through multiple relays." Nari studied the patterns. She had hunted traitors before during her phantom days. They always made the same mistakes. They always thought they were smarter than everyone else. That arrogance left traces. She noticed something in the message timing. These signals stopped during certain periods. Regular intervals. She pulled up another screen. "Now compare that to the movement logs of everyone in this room." Threx processed the data instantly. One delegate matches the pattern. During every signal blackout, this individual was in a position where others would notice if they were transmitting. Who? Velmoth demanded. Nari looked at the data and felt her blood go cold. Ambassador Quellen. The old Skyborn's eyes went wide. That is absurd. I am the neutral mediator. Exactly. Nari turned to face him. Everyone trusts the Skyborn to be neutral. You have access to all communications. You move freely between delegations. You are perfect. This is circumstantial evidence at best, Quellen protested. A coincidence in timing proves nothing. You are right. Nari smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Which is why I need to find real proof, and I know exactly how to get it. She looked at Daehyun. How long until the next attack? Threx estimates 20 minutes. Good. Nari checked her weapon. Then we have just enough time to set a trap. And Quellen is going to help us whether he wants to or not. Velmoth grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. I am beginning to understand why humans are so dangerous. You do not just fight with weapons. You fight with your minds. A warrior who only knows violence is a tool, Nari said. A warrior who knows strategy is a weapon. And a warrior who knows when not to fight? She looked at each of them in turn. That is someone truly dangerous. The pieces were falling into place. She would prove Quellen was the traitor. She would stop the attacks. And she would make sure everyone here survived to see the coalition fleet arrive. But first she had to spring her trap. And for that she needed the attackers to make one more assault. She needed them to come right into her hands. The trap was simple. Nari learned long ago that complicated plans failed under pressure. Simple plans executed perfectly won battles. She gathered everyone in the command center. The next attack is coming soon. But this time we will not just defend. We will draw them in and capture their leader. Velmoth looked skeptical. Capture? Why not kill them all? Because dead men tell no stories. We need someone alive who can confirm who hired them and why. Nari pulled up the tactical map. We make it look like our defenses are failing. We create a weak point in our line. They will focus their assault there. And then? Quellen asked. His voice was steady, but Nari noticed his feathers were slightly ruffled. A sign of stress in Skyborn. Then we close the trap. We surround them and cut off their escape. We take their leader alive. She looked directly at the ambassador. But this only works if everyone follows orders exactly. One person acting independently could ruin everything. I understand, Quellen said. Nari did not believe him. But she did not need to. Her real trap was not for the attackers. It was for him. She assigned positions carefully. The Kresh warriors would hold the main defensive line. The Skyborn would be positioned to cut off escape routes. Threx would monitor all communications, and Jiwan would stay with Quellen supposedly to protect him but really to watch him. What about you? Daehyun asked quietly. I will be at the weak point. When they push through, I stop them. Alone? That is suicide. Nari smiled. I have done worse. Trust me. They had 15 minutes before Threx's sensors detected movement. Nari used the time to check her weapons and prepare. She also did something else. She placed a small device behind a damaged panel near where Quellen was positioned. It was a communication recorder, something she had built from spare parts in the command center. If Quellen was the traitor, he would try to signal the attackers during the chaos of battle. The recorder would catch him. The motion sensors started beeping. The attackers were coming, many of them this time. Threx estimated at least 40 hostile contacts, positions. Nari called out. Everyone moved to their assigned locations. She took her place at the weak point, a section of the defensive line with only light barriers. To any observer, it looked like a gap in their defenses caused by lack of materials. The attackers came fast. Plasma fire filled the corridors. Explosions rocked the walls. The Kresh warriors roared and returned fire. The battle was loud, chaotic, and violent. Just as Nari predicted, the attackers spotted the weak point. They concentrated their forces there, trying to break through. 20 armed extremists rushed toward her position. She waited until they were committed. Until they were too close to retreat easily. Then she moved. Her rifle fired in controlled bursts. 3 shots per target, center mass. The first attacker fell, then the second. She moved constantly, never staying in one place. The extremists expected a panicked diplomat. Instead, they found a trained killer. She used every trick she had learned in 8 years of special operations. She used the smoke and debris for cover. She redirected their fire with careful positioning. She isolated targets and eliminated them quickly. But there were too many. Even with all her skill, she could not stop 40 soldiers alone. That was fine. She did not need to stop them. She just needed to slow them down. Now, she shouted into her communicator. The Kresh warriors surged forward from both sides, closing the trap. The Skyborn sealed the escape routes. The attackers found themselves surrounded with nowhere to run. Most of them died fighting. Kresh warriors showed no mercy to those who threatened their battle sister. But Nari managed to capture 3 of them alive, including a leader with rank insignia on his armor. She dragged the leader into the command center personally. He was Kresh, but his armor was unmarked. A mercenary, not a true member of Velmoth's empire. Velmoth grabbed the captured Kresh by the throat. "Who hired you? Who sent you here?" The mercenary laughed through his pain. "You will die here. All of you. The plan has already succeeded." "What plan?" Nuri demanded. This summit was never about peace. It was about eliminating everyone who might actually achieve it. The mercenary spat blood. "My employer wants the wars to continue. Wants the conflicts to spread. Dead diplomats mean more fighting. More fighting means more profit. Who is your employer?" Velmoth roared, but the mercenary's eyes went blank. He convulsed once and fell still. Poison capsule, Nari realized. He had killed himself rather than reveal more. She cursed quietly. But she had expected this. Professionals often came prepared to die. That was why she had set her other trap. "Threx, what did your sensors pick up during the battle?" The insectoid worked at its terminal. Multiple communications on encrypted channels. Most were tactical coordination by the attackers. But there was one anomaly. A signal from inside this room to outside the station. Very brief. Very sophisticated. "Can you trace the source?" "Already done." The signal originated from Ambassador Quellen's position. Everyone turned to look at the Skyborn. He stood calmly, showing no sign of panic. "This is ridiculous. I was defending myself during the battle. Perhaps I accidentally triggered something. Perhaps." Nari walked to the damaged panel where she had hidden her recorder. She pulled it out and activated it. Or perhaps this recording will tell us the truth. The device played back audio from Quellen's position during the battle. His voice came through clearly. "Abort assault. They were ready for you. The human diplomat is more dangerous than anticipated. Proceed to final contingency." The room erupted. Velmoth roared in rage. Other delegates shouted accusations. Quellen tried to flee, but Kresh warriors blocked every exit. Nari stood in front of him, her rifle pointed at his chest. "Final contingency. What does that mean?" The old Skyborn's demeanor changed completely. The gentle ambassador vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. "It means you have already lost, human. This was never about killing you during the attacks. That was just meant to keep you busy." "Busy from what?" Quellen smiled. "The real weapon is already in place. A fusion bomb hidden in the station's power core, set to detonate in 30 minutes. Large enough to destroy this entire section of the station and everyone in it." Horror spread through the room. 30 minutes. Not enough time for evacuation. Not enough time for coalition forces to arrive. "Where is the bomb exactly?" Nari kept her voice calm despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Even if I told you, you could not disarm it in time. The trigger mechanism requires both a code and a biometric scan, my biometric specifically, and I will never give you the code." Velmoth grabbed Quellen and lifted him off the ground. "Then you will die with us, traitor. I have escape pods nearby. I will be gone before the explosion." Quellen seemed pleased with himself. "My employers will be happy. The summit failed. War will continue, and I will be very wealthy." Nari's mind raced through possibilities. 30 minutes to find a bomb, bypass biometric security, and enter a code she did not have. The odds were impossible. But she had survived impossible odds before. She looked at Daehyun. "Keep him restrained. Do not let him near any communications equipment." "Where are you going?" he asked. "To disarm a bomb." She checked her rifle one more time. "Jiwon, come with me. I need your help." The young woman's eyes went wide. "Me, but I do not know anything about explosives." "You know engineering. You were top of your class in applied physics." Nari had read Jiwon's file when she was assigned as an attaché. "I need someone who understands fusion reactions and power systems." "Commander, I am not ready for this." Nari put a hand on her shoulder. "No one is ever ready. You just do it anyway." That is what courage means, she turned to Threx. Can you access the power core's schematics? Already done. Downloading to your datapad now. Nari took the pad and headed for the door. Jiwan followed reluctantly. As they left, Nari heard Velmoth say to Quellen, "If they fail, I will personally ensure you die screaming." The corridors to the power core were dangerous. Fires burned in some sections. Bodies littered the floors. The station's superstructure groaned under the stress of damage. They moved quickly, Nari leading with her rifle ready. Jiwan struggled to keep up. How can you be so calm? I am not calm. I am terrified. Nari checked a corner before moving forward. But fear is just information. It tells you there is danger. What you do with that information is what matters. They reached the power core access. The door was sealed. Nari used an override code Threx had provided. Inside, the core hummed with barely contained energy. And there, attached to the primary feed line, was the bomb. It was elegant in its simplicity. A fusion charge wired directly into the station's power system. When it detonated, it would use the station's own reactors to magnify the explosion. Nari examined the device carefully. The biometric scanner is here. The code panel here, just like Quellen said. Can we bypass them? Jiwan asked. Maybe, if we had 3 hours and a full engineering team. Nari checked her chronometer. We have 24 minutes. She sat down in front of the bomb and really looked at it. This was the moment her old life had prepared her for. All those missions. All those battles. All those scars. They had been leading to this. She touched the burn scar on her left forearm. I got this at Europa Station. Reactor breach. I had to manually override a failing containment system while being exposed to radiation. Why are you telling me this? Because scars tell stories. And stories teach lessons. Nari pulled up the bomb schematic on her datapad. Europa taught me that fusion systems have a weakness. They need perfect containment or they fail safely. Too much disruption and they shut down instead of exploding. Understanding dawned in Jiwan's eyes. You want to disrupt the bomb's fusion charge. Exactly. We cannot disarm it, but we can make it fail. Nari pointed to the schematic. Here, the magnetic containment field. If we can destabilize it, the fusion reaction will collapse harmlessly. But we need to access the field generator, which is behind the biometric lock. Yes? Nari smiled. That is where you come in. Can you overload the containment system from outside? Force it to shut down? Jiwan studied the schematics. Her hands shook, but her mind was working. Maybe. If I reroute power from the auxiliary systems, create a feedback loop in the magnetic coils, it would be like forcing too much electricity through a light bulb until it burns out. Can you do it in 22 minutes? I can try. They worked together. Jiwan's fingers flew over control panels, rerouting power and building her feedback loop. Nari stood guard, protecting them from any remaining extremists. Her mind counted down the minutes. 15 minutes left. 10 minutes. 5 minutes. Almost there, Jiwan muttered. Sweat poured down her face. Just need to synchronize the final surge. 2 minutes left. Jiwan, I know. I am working on it. 1 minute left. Jiwan slammed her hand down on the control panel. Now! The power core shrieked. Lights flickered throughout the section. The bomb's magnetic containment began to destabilize. The fusion charge collapsed inward, losing coherence. The chronometer hit 0. Nothing happened. The bomb was dead. Jiwan collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. We did it. We actually did it. Nari helped her up. No, you did it. I just kept you safe while you worked. They made their way back to the command center. When they arrived, everyone stared at them. Daehyun spoke first. The bomb? Disarmed, Nari said simply. Quellen's face went pale. No, that is not possible. You could not have. We did. Nari stood in front of him. Your plan failed. The summit will continue. Peace will have a chance. The old Skyborn looked at her with hatred. You should have died years ago in your wars, human. Many people have thought that. I am still here. They are not. She gestured to Velmoth. He is yours to judge under Kresh law. The warlord smiled grimly. There is only one sentence for traitors who betray the coalition. Hours later, coalition forces finally arrived. They secured the station and arrested the surviving extremists. Quellen was taken into custody, along with evidence of his conspiracy. Nari stood in the command center watching the fleet arrive through the windows. Daehyun joined her. You saved everyone, he said. We saved everyone. All of us together. She looked at her arms, at the scars visible with her sleeves still rolled up. That is what these scars mean. Not that I survived violence, but that I learned how to protect others from it. Ji-won approached them shyly. Commander, I wanted to thank you. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. You saved us all with your engineering skills. Never forget that courage and intelligence are just as important as strength. Velmoth approached and placed his fist over his heart. Battle sister. The Kresh owe you a blood debt. When the summit resumes, you will have our full support for peace. Other delegates came forward with similar promises. The attack had united them in ways that negotiations never could. As Nari looked around at them all, she realized something. Her scars had told their stories, and those stories had changed everything. 6 months had passed since the attack on the Coalition station. The galaxy had changed in those months, shifting in ways both subtle and profound. The summit had been postponed for 3 weeks, while investigators examined every detail of Quellen's conspiracy. What they found shocked everyone. The old Skyborn ambassador had not acted alone. He was part of a network that spanned multiple species and governments, a shadow organization that profited from conflict. They sold weapons to both sides of wars. They manipulated peace negotiations to fail. They had been operating for decades, growing rich while the galaxy bled. But Quellen's capture broke the network open. Coalition investigators followed the trails he left behind. Arrests were made across dozens of worlds. The organization crumbled as former members turned on each other to save themselves. Nari stood on Earth now, in the great assembly hall where the new peace treaty would be signed. She wore her diplomatic uniform, but this time her sleeves were rolled up. The scars on her arms were visible to everyone. She no longer hid what she was or what she had done. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the hall. The treaty they would sign today would establish shared control of the disputed mining colonies. All species would benefit. All species would contribute. It was not a perfect solution, but it was fair. Velmoth approached her, moving through the crowd with surprising gentleness for someone so large. The Kresh warlord had become an unexpected ally in the month since the attack. He placed his fist over his heart in greeting. Battle sister, it is good to see you again. And you, Velmoth, how is the Kresh Empire? Changed. Your actions exposed corruption within our military. Extremists who wanted endless war have been removed from power. My emperor himself has thanked you for this service. He looked at her arms. You still show your scars openly. They are part of who I am. Hiding them felt like hiding from truth. A familiar clicking sound announced Threx's approach. The insectoid representative had also become a friend during the investigation. The hive mind wishes to express gratitude once again. Your tactical analysis helped uncover 3 cells of the conspiracy on our worlds. I am glad I could help. Nari smiled. How is collective consciousness treating you? With more respect for individual initiative than before, your actions demonstrated that single beings can change the course of history. The hive mind has learned from this. Daehyun joined them, looking pleased. The ceremony begins in 10 minutes. Are you ready? I am. Nari looked around the hall at all the delegates. Is Ji-won here? She is waiting outside with her family. She wanted me to tell you she passed her combat certification last week. Top of her class. Good. She will make an excellent diplomat, one who can defend herself and others if needed. The ceremony began with speeches from various leaders. They spoke of unity and cooperation. They spoke of the terrible price of war. They spoke of hope for a better future. When it came time for the human representative to speak, Nari walked to the podium. She had not prepared a long speech. She never liked speeches much, but she had something to say. I am Lieutenant Commander Han Nari. Most of you know me as the human diplomat who helped stop the attack on the Coalition station. But before I was a diplomat, I was a soldier. A warrior. I fought in battles that still give me nightmares. I killed people who were trying to kill others. I survived when many of my friends did not. She paused, letting the words settle. I have scars from those fights. Some you can see on my arms. Some are deeper in places that do not show. Every scar tells a story. Every story taught me something. She rolled up her sleeves further, showing more of the marks. This burn is from saving civilians during a reactor failure. This cut is from defending scientists against raiders. This chemical burn is from shutting down a weapons lab before it could produce bioweapons. She looked directly at the gathered delegates. I show you these scars not to brag about my battles, I show them because they represent something important. Each scar is a battle I won not by killing but by saving, by protecting, by choosing to put others before myself. I became a diplomat because I was tired of fighting, because I wanted to save lives by preventing wars, not by winning them. But the attack on the station taught me something. It taught me that peace is not about refusing to fight. Peace is about being strong enough to fight, but wise enough to choose another way. She pointed to various delegates in the crowd. Velmoth taught me that showing strength can build respect. Threx taught me that different perspectives make us wiser. Jiwan taught me that courage is not about being unafraid. It is about acting despite fear. And all of you taught me that former enemies can become friends when we face common threats together. Today we sign a treaty, words on paper that promise peace, but words alone do not keep peace. People keep peace. Strong people who choose diplomacy over violence. Brave people who refuse to profit from conflict. Wise people who understand that war creates no winners, only survivors. She looked down at her scarred arms. I have won many battles, some with weapons, some with words, but the most important battle I ever won was the one against myself. The battle to choose peace when violence would have been easier. That is a battle we all must fight every day. These scars remind me of that choice. They remind me that strength without wisdom is wasted, that courage without compassion is hollow, that survival without purpose is meaningless. She stepped back from the podium. I am battle sister to the creche, friend to the hive mind, mentor to the next generation of human diplomats, but most importantly, I am someone who chooses to build rather than destroy. I hope all of us can make that same choice. The hall was silent for a moment. Then Velmoth stood and placed his fist over his heart. One by one, every delegate in the hall rose and made their species' gesture of respect. Even those who had mocked humans months ago now showed honor. The treaty was signed. All parties agreed to the terms. The disputed colonies would be shared. The resources would benefit everyone. It was not perfect, but it was fair. And most importantly, it was peace. After the ceremony, Nari found a quiet balcony overlooking the city. Earth looked beautiful in the evening light. She had not been home in 3 years. It felt good to stand on her own world again. Jiwan found her there. The young woman looked different now. More confident. More sure of herself. She carried herself like someone who knew she could handle whatever came. Commander, I wanted to thank you again for everything you taught me. You do not need to thank me. You taught yourself. I just gave you opportunities to learn. You do not need to thank me. You taught yourself. I just gave you opportunities to learn. Still, Jiwan hesitated. I was assigned to a new posting. Ambassador Park recommended me for the delegation to the Outer Rim worlds. I leave in 2 weeks. That is excellent. You will do well there. I am scared, Jiwan admitted. What if I am not ready? What if something like the station attack happens again? Nari turned to face her fully. You will never feel completely ready. I have been fighting for years and I still feel unprepared sometimes. But that fear is good. It means you take your responsibility seriously. She touched one of her scars. These marks are not badges of honor. They are reminders of mistakes I made, of times I was not fast enough or smart enough or strong enough. Each one represents a lesson I learned the hard way. You want me to make mistakes? I want you to learn from them when you do. Mistakes are how we grow. The important thing is to keep trying, keep learning, and never give up on finding better solutions. Jiwan looked at Nari's arms. Will I end up with scars like yours? I hope not. I hope your generation finds ways to achieve peace without bleeding for it. That is why I fought. Not so you could be like me, but so you could be better than me. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over Earth. After a while, a younger human officer approached nervously. She looked barely 20, fresh from the diplomatic academy. She reminded Nari of how Jiwan had been just 6 months ago. Excuse me, Commander Han. I am Ensign Lee Minna. I just graduated from the academy. I heard about what you did at the coalition station, about how you saved everyone. She seemed almost too nervous to speak. I wanted to ask for advice about being a diplomat in a dangerous galaxy. Nari smiled gently. What do you want to know? How do you balance being strong enough to protect people but still believing in peace? How do you choose when to fight and when to talk? It was a good question, an important question. Nari thought carefully about her answer. Strength is not just about fighting, she said. It is about knowing when to fight, when to talk, and when to show the world who you really are. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to use violence. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you are scared. She looked at her scars again. These remind me of battles I won. But not all of them were won with weapons. Some were won with patience. Some were won with compassion. Some were won by simply refusing to give up on finding a better way. I fought so that others would not have to. But I will fight again if I must. That is the balance. Being ready for war, but always hoping for peace. Being strong enough to protect, but wise enough to know that protection sometimes means preventing conflict before it starts. Lee Min-ha listened carefully, absorbing every word. Thank you, Commander. I will remember that. As the young officer walked away, Ji-won laughed softly. You are becoming a legend, you know. They tell stories about you at the academy now. The diplomat who was really a warrior. The one who showed her scars and changed everything. I do not want to be a legend. Legends are not real people. They are myths that forget all the mistakes and failures. But you did change things. The galaxy sees humans differently now. They respect us. They respect strength. They always have. We just showed them that strength comes in many forms. Nari turned to face the city again. But respect is not the same as peace. Respect is just the beginning. Now comes the hard part. Actually building something lasting. Daehyun joined them on the balcony. The Kresh ambassador wants to speak with you. Something about training exchanges between our military and theirs. Training exchanges. 6 months ago they thought we had no warriors worth knowing. Now they want to learn from us. You changed their minds. You changed many minds. Daehyun put a hand on her shoulder. I am proud of you. Not just for stopping the attack, but for having the courage to show everyone who you really are. I was tired of hiding, tired of pretending the past did not exist. Nari looked at her mentor and friend. You knew me during the Phantom years. You saw what I was. What do you think of what I have become? I think you have grown. Warriors become soldiers. Soldiers become veterans. Veterans become teachers. You have completed the cycle, he smiled. And I think you are finally at peace with yourself. Not completely. I still have nightmares about the battles I fought, about the people I could not save. But I am learning to live with them, learning that scars are not just wounds that healed. They are proof that we survived. Proof that we kept going when it would have been easier to quit. A message came through on Nari's communicator. It was from Velmoth. Battle Sister, the Kresh delegation request your presence at a ceremony tomorrow. We wish to formally honor you before we return home, she typed back. I will be there. What kind of ceremony? We are dedicating a new class of warships. We want to name the lead vessel after you, the human Nari, first of its kind, built for strength but designed for peace. Nari stared at the message. A warship named after her. A year ago, she would have refused. Violence was behind her. She had chosen peace, but now she understood better. Peace was not about refusing to acknowledge violence. Peace was about being strong enough to protect it. Being ready to fight but wise enough to prevent the need. She typed her response. I am honored. I will attend. That night, Nari stood in her quarters looking at herself in the mirror. She wore a simple shirt with her sleeves rolled up. Every scar was visible. She traced them one by one, remembering Europa Station. 17 years old, fresh from training. She had saved hundreds but lost her entire team. The radiation burns had taken months to heal. The guilt had taken years, Kepler Colony. 22 years old, already a veteran of 6 operations. 18 hours of continuous combat. She had taken 7 wounds that day but never stopped fighting. 32 people survived because she refused to quit. The Phantom War. Too many battles to count. Too many friends lost. Too many scars earned. She had been 28 when it ended. 28 and feeling like she was 100 years old. Then she had walked away, chosen diplomacy, tried to build peace instead of fighting for it. But the attack on the coalition station had taught her something. She could not escape what she was, could not pretend the warrior inside her did not exist. The question was not whether to fight. The question was what to fight for. She thought about Lee Min-ha, the young officer who had asked for advice. She thought about Ji-won, who had learned to combine intelligence with courage. She thought about all the young people who would follow after her. They would face their own battles, make their own scars, learn their own lessons, but maybe, just maybe, they would learn from her mistakes. Maybe they would find ways to build peace without bleeding for it. Maybe they would be better than she was. That was what the scars meant, she realized. Not just battles she had won, but lessons she could teach, stories she could share, wisdom she could pass on so others did not have to learn everything the hard way. She pulled her sleeves down, covering the scars again, but she knew she would roll them up again tomorrow, and the day after. She would keep showing them to anyone who needed to see, because hiding them meant hiding the truth, and truth was the foundation of peace. The next morning, Nari attended the creche ceremony. The warship was impressive, built with both human and creche technology, a symbol of cooperation, of former enemies becoming allies. Velmoth stood beside her as they unveiled the ship's name. The human Nari, built to protect the peace we have created together. She looked at the massive vessel, at her name written in both human and creche script. I hope it never has to fire its weapons. As do I, but if it must, it will fight as you did. With strength and honor and wisdom, the warlord placed his fist over his heart. You taught us something important, battle sister. That the strongest warriors are those who choose peace. That the bravest fighters are those who prevent battles before they begin. I only did what needed to be done. No, you did what no one else could do. You showed us a better way. He gestured to the ship. This vessel will carry your name across the stars. It will remind everyone that humans are not weak, that diplomats can be warriors, that scars tell stories of survival and strength. The ceremony ended with a traditional creche war chant, but instead of singing about conquest and victory, they sang about protection and peace, about choosing to build rather than destroy. As Nari listened, she thought about how far they had all come. How much had changed in just 6 months. How one moment of choice, one decision to show her true self had changed everything. She looked at her arms, at the scars visible beneath her rolled-up sleeves. Each mark told a story. Each story taught a lesson. Each lesson had brought her to this moment. They had smirked once, saying she had never fought. They had dismissed her as weak, as soft, as unprepared for the realities of a violent galaxy. She had rolled up her sleeves and shown them scars of battles won. Not just with weapons, but with courage and wisdom and refusal to give up. And in doing so, she had won the most important battle of all. The battle for peace. Nari smiled as she stood before the warship bearing her name. The scars on her arms ached slightly, as they always did when she thought about the past. But the pain was bearable now, manageable, because she finally understood what the scars meant. They were not marks of violence. They were marks of survival. Proof that she had faced death and kept going. Evidence that she had fought for something bigger than herself. They were battles won, all of them, and the greatest victory was choosing to build peace from the ashes of war.